please. Thank you. See, I was doing that, but it wasn't cooperating. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is David LeBay. I'm a member of the community here in the Niagara region. My people are Innu from Quebec and from Labrador. And I have one grandparent who comes from Romania. So I can make some pretty good cabbage rolls. You know. I've been asked to say a prayer. The prayer that James Shauna used this morning is the one that I always use because it has a history that goes back to the residential schools. And James's dad, Joe, went to the school in Spanish, Ontario, just north of Manitoulin on the mainland. And he went there with two other boys that were from his community. And they were just little guys, little tykes, and they were always being told not to speak their language. And that was difficult for them because that was their only language. And so what they did was they would get together, according to what I was told, they get together in the morning and they would say this little prayer. It's a child's prayer. And I love it for its simplicity and its directness. And it's like a minimalist prayer. It covers what you need to have in your life for survival. It's not geared at any kind of extreme pleasure or other things that people pray for sometimes. So I'm going to say that. It may sound a little bit different because I went by the tape that I had, and my ears aren't exactly the greatest, and neither is my presentation. So I'll go with it. I'll just introduce myself first. Nene enu nene nitasanan dunjaba makadema kwa dodem. Miigwech mishomes ibiwea sa shing nunga. Miigwech nikit nunga gichkuk. Wene chikanawamas me wene chikanaonok. Miigwechke shkagigamakwe. Ago mijong bimodzoen. Ago mijong bish. Ago mijong Nijam, Agwamijong Westniak, Agwamijong Tig, Agwamijong Westniak, meanwhile Agwamijong Nasewan, Sema ni Bigetna, Gieranong, Wabanong, Jaunong, Mino Pinkishmok, Nadumushi Chipskukabaya, Mino Jesatwea. Ea, miigwech, mishomes, naha. Well, what it talks about is the fact that we were given life here on earth. We give thanks for the sun shining on us on a day when we can come together and look upon each other and talk to each other in good ways. And that is what we are here for today. So I'll leave you with that and turn the mic over to somebody who knows how to turn it off.
Grandmother walks, grandmother prays, grandmother cries, a tear on the grave for her Salish daughter Hapkudni in the land where the sun rises high. And the bitter root blows as the elder cries, the eagle flies, her prayer up high, a tear for a daughter who should not die. She's a mother, a sister, someone's wife. Her hands were tied, her spirit broke, strangled at the hands of a stranger's rope. They found her body 3 states away in the corner of a cornfield. There she lay. She was just here a short time ago, but where she went they did not know. But somebody knows she's gone missing, and somebody knows why her red blood runs cold. And she's murdered and missing in a land called home.
Annie, bonjour. Kwe, bonjour. That was a song called Missing. It was a song that was created by Linda McKenzie and Kenny Lee Lewis from the Steve Miller Band and Glenn Hewitt. She's a Confederate Salish and elder, and it's actually up for a NAMI Award this year. This is the song that started the journey last year when Kenny Lee called me and said, when we're doing Drums Across Canada, he says, I think I have a song that might resonate, and if you like, you can use it during your virtual programming. And so he did, he sent it. And we used it last year as part of our bridging and our programming. But the song stayed with me, and it just kept speaking to me. And you're talking about all of the visions that came on a regular basis, and they changed on a regular basis. But I wanted you to hear the song that really started this journey that we're all on right now together. So before that, I'd like to greet you in my language, because a lot of our elders say that our language is almost an extinct species, and that any time that we have a chance to speak it, that we try and we use our voice to speak it. So, Ani bonjour kwe, nyawi kopa nadichnakas, makwa dodam, nimki dodam, Niagara donjaba, Métis Anishinaabe kwayandao. My spirit name is She Who Stands in the Center. My French-English name is Michelle-Elise Burnett. I'm Bear Clan, and now Thunderbird Clan. I'm from the Niagara region. I'm a proud Métis Nation citizen of Ontario, and I have Algonquin roots from Nipissing. I'm also the artistic director of Celebration of Nations and the producer of the Red Dress exhibit, If Only These Dresses Could Tell Their Story. And today, they're on their journey. They've been awakened, and they're going to tell their story. And this is not the only stop. We were in Art Park in Lewiston, New York, and we had these dresses, these spirits, these, these are installations. They're artistic installations that have been given a voice again by their creators, by their families. They're very strong, they're very powerful. And they will tell the story, but they're going to continue, because we're going to continue this path, and I've promised everyone here that we are going to walk together, and we are going to cover all of Turtle Island so that people know the truth of what's happening. It's hard to peel back some of those realities. It's hard to peel back and to tell the story of something that's never been told before in history books, at school, businesses, in homes. It's not easy, but it's time. It's time for us to have the voice. And as a woman, it is my responsibility, as all of us, we have that responsibility to nurture, to protect, but also to give voices to those that need a voice. And that's what we're here to do. There's all these things I was going to say, but obviously I'm not. I'm just going to. But we need to be grateful. We need to be grateful that we're together. And gratitude is such an important aspect of our being and our breathing and coming together in circle. Sometimes we forget to be grateful. I woke up this morning and the sun was shining. I could smell that air from the water. And I looked out the clouds. The winds were just blowing the clouds, and all of a sudden it's like, more art. Creators giving me art to look at, and it changed. You know, that I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my four-legged sometimes. He bumps into everything, but you know, but I am so grateful for our community, for the women in our community, for the men in our community, as we all sort of lift and support one another, and we also respect one another's responsibility within that community. And that's what honoring our matriarchs and rebalancing our community that way. It's important that we remind each other that we have a responsibility to love, to honor, to respect one another and all living things. And that if we harm one of that like we're all in a web, and if we sort of harm one part of that web, it's all going to spiral down and affect us all. It's like that 7 generations. So it comes back to these dresses and these, not even the dresses, they're spirits now. These dresses have a voice. They are living, it's a living dress, a living voice. And it's really important that we remember we need to respect them, to honor them, to give them the love that they did not receive in the last moments of their life. We need them to know that we're holding space for them right now. We need consciously to stop having our women, girls, people, Indigenous people being taken from us too soon. I am going to read this part because I don't want to forget this. Why do I speak of the importance of gratitude? Because it is the way of our ancestors, and that's the way that they lived, and it's part of our original instructions from the Creator. We need to go back to the original instructions. We need to go back to before colonization, before patriarchy took over. A time when our women and our men had reciprocal, respectful balance of their responsibility within that community. When we honor our matriarchs, our water carriers, our life givers, we have forgotten how to do that, and we have to go back to those ways. The Red Dress exhibit is about the loss of our original instruction due to colonization, which created the intergenerational tailspin that we're in today. The story starts from the residential school door right here. It started many years before that, but when I started this story, I wanted to start at the residential schools, the first day that those children went and opened those doors. With Indigenous women being victims of either being missing or murdered, being more than 10 times, and this is US, 10 times the national average, this exhibit is all about empathic love. These dresses are installations of loved ones who have gone missing or have transitioned to the spiritual world. They have been created by these loved ones to honor them, to bring them back their spirit, to give them another chance to have a voice, each unique, each carrying their own story, each creating much needed awareness along their journey as they go across Turtle Island. At this time, we have 4 of our Red Dress Collective that I've been so honored and so privileged to be able to work with for the last 8 months, 5 months, 8 months. But we're walking this path together. We're holding each other, we're holding space for each other. We're growing together, we're strengthening together, we're becoming more resilient together. Because together our voices is going to be stronger than if it was not resonating out there. I'd like to welcome Vanessa, if you just want to raise your hand. Cheyenne, Marie, and Fallon. And our moderator, Dr. Robin Bourgeois, VP, VP of Indigenous Engagement at Brock University. She will be our moderator today. With that, I leave you with our circle, her Moccasins talk, red dress circle.
Tansi Kinanaskomatanao. My name is Dr. Robin Bourgeois. It is an honor to be here. My spirit name is Laughing Otter Caring Woman. I am Cree. My family comes from Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta. I am truly honored to have been asked to facilitate this discussion because, as many of you know, I was trafficked in my late teens in Vancouver's downtown east side at the height of the Picton murders. And I survived an experience that many people don't. And that has driven my entire life. I got a second chance, and I want to use that to change the world, just like our 4 panelists are also doing. So this is time for stories. Stories are everything, and the truth about stories, as Thomas King reminds us, is that's all we are. So I'm going to turn this over to our panelists to share their stories, and I ask you to hold them in your heart as they share their words with you. And I'm going to start, I'll go this way if that's okay with everybody, and we will start with Cheyenne Jenkins.
Honey, hello, Scano everyone. My English name is Cheyenne Jenkins. The Mohawk name that I was gifted is She Who Speaks with Kind and Considerate Words, which is hard for me. I struggle with that, that I think that I always have to be kind, and being kind is not nice, and that's what I learned. You don't have to be nice, you just have to be kind. So sometimes when I go out and I say some harsh words, like talking on MMIWG is harsh words. It's abuse and violence that it's happened to our people, but it's something that I have to do because this is called to me. Before I was born, my cousin was murdered. Actually, a few days before I was born, it was actually it was 2 years before I was actually born, but the due date is my due date was that day. But my family kept this story a secret, and they didn't talk about this because they felt like they didn't protect my family enough. But my cousin left. She fled her husband, and when she left, she went to a women's shelter, and they were full, and they couldn't accept her until Monday. And so instead of going back, she hid at a hotel with her son. And she spent 2 days there, but was waiting until Monday to go to the shelter. And on Sunday, she was murdered. Her husband had found her and stabbed her multiple times. And as you can see on the dress that I have made, there's multiple knives on there. That's to represent the multiple stabbings. But if you look in the middle one is broken off, and that's to represent that it was a fit of anger. It was a rage fit, and he just stabbed her multiple times, and the last one, he had snapped the knife off inside of her body. Her son was only 3 years old. And because I had not known that, that memory was just stuck inside of my body. It was just a blood memory that no one had ever told me. But then I had this dream that I was gifted this red material, and I had to make a jingle dress. But I already knew as a jingle dress dancer that I danced for myself last. And that's what that meant, that red material was to make for a missing and murdered Indigenous woman and girls in Two-Spirit, to go out and dance for them. And I kind of kept that to myself for a little bit. I wasn't ready to share that yet. And then I told my mother-in-law, and I told her over text, and she never answered me back, and I thought that was super weird. But the next morning, I was like, why didn't you text me back? And she had previously, the weekend before, been gifted a children's jingle dress book. And that jingle dress book, she had the dress, but she didn't have enough cones. And in the story, it talks about how that's the medicine on that dress is the cones. And because she doesn't have enough, she wants to go out in community and ask for a little bit of their medicine, a little bit of that healing sound for her dress, but she knows she can't take all of the cones off someone's dress, or that would take all of their medicine and all that sound away. So she goes out in the community and she asks, and eventually she has enough cones to be able to go to the powwow and make it and be able to dance those songs. And that's why I have the red, I had the bias tape with the jingles on the bottom. That's to represent that healing, and so that when it hangs, that when the wind blows, that healing will be released, and that it's to heal the families. And I also have the the black hands on the red dress, and that's to represent the struggle and the fight that our women put up. When they're taken, they fight to leave. But that's not always what happens. And so a little bit after, I did an exhibit in Hamilton on kind of like this. I had red dresses like this hanging, and we had an exhibit inside. And I would just talk to community every day. I would sit there at the exhibit and offer smudging and be there to share my story, as well as listen to other stories. But what I found there was that there was a lot of people that had no idea that this was going on. And they were angry that they didn't know that this was happening in Canada, and never mind the whole world. And a little bit after that exhibit, my own sister had went missing. And that was hard for us, because even though I did the exhibit, we didn't know what to do, and we didn't know where to turn to. But when we went and started to kind of go down that journey, we went to the police, and the police counted her as a runaway. So if you're a runaway, you have to wait 2 weeks before you're a missing person. And because of the exhibit, we knew that we needed to find her within those 2 weeks, or we might never find her again. So about 7 days went by, and we were still waiting for those 2 weeks to come up, and she finally had contacted one of her friends, and that's when she said she wasn't able to leave where she was. And that's when we brought that information to the police, that they were able to post that she was missing and not a runaway anymore. But when that was posted, I got a lot of hate put towards myself because I did these exhibits, and because I went out and I speak and I advocate for our women, and I look after our women. How did my own sister go missing? So then that was a family struggle that we had to go through. So my mother, my grandmother, and I, so the three of us got in a car and we went and found her. And that was a lot of struggle for us, because the police didn't find her. We found her. We found her alive. She's well and alive today. But this is why I go out and talk, because this can happen to anyone. It can happen to myself, and this is why I started to talk about it, because I'm at the age that most of our women go missing. So I wanted to make sure that I speak what very little that I can, so that I can share my story and spread awareness so that this doesn't happen. And something that I normally say at my talks is, now that I shared my story with all of you, it's now your story, and you have to share this awareness and spread this awareness, because it's one of the calls to justice, and we need to continue that work with that. So, thank you. Nyawa.
Kinanas Komatin, Cheyenne. And in Cree, that word is how we say thank you, but it means I'm grateful for you, and thank you for sharing your story with us today. Our next speaker is someone we've done some incredible things together. And it's my honor to introduce you to Fallon Fernacci.
Thank you. This is usually when Robin and I tell each other how much we love one another. If you've seen us talk ever together. So my name's Fallon Fernacci. My spirit name is White Thunder Woman. The elder who gifted me my name said that I'm here to make a lot of noise. And when he first told me that and I received the name, I thought, I had no idea what it meant. And then within about a year or so, as I continued down this journey, I realized what it was, and it was to take up space in rooms like this and share my story, my family's story, and all of the others who have gone missing or have been murdered as well. So the feeling of having a purpose of something like this isn't something I want, but it's shoes that I'll gladly step into and be the voice for. So for those of you that don't know, I always assume everyone knows my story. At the age of 9 years old, I witnessed both my parents' murder, and myself and my younger brother were held hostage for 6 hours before the RCMP came. From the time of the first 911 call, it was 2:30 in the morning, and the RCMP didn't actually come into our house until 8:30 in the morning. Several 911 calls went in. I myself called 911 asking for help. At one point, a 911 dispatcher hung up on the phone on me. I was 9 years old at the time. My younger brother was 5. My older brother was 17. He escaped, and he was the person who put in the first 911 call. So he ran to a nearby neighbor's home, which was my parents' best friend's home. And now I call them mom and dad. So we went through all of that. I just thought it was normal. It was my story. I grew up out west in Manitoba, but before my father passed away, he instilled in me to be very proud. He was the president for the Manitoba Métis Federation for the St. Eustache local, the community that I'm from, and I got to be exactly who I was born to be. And he instilled that in me in a really young age, and so I'm just so grateful for that time with him. I had to move here to Ontario, so while this is my home, I call Manitoba my soul's home. And anytime I talk about it, I genuinely feel like a pull in my heart. I'm only crying because I love it so much there. It's okay, Michelle. I said I have my sash to wipe my tears if I need. I do this lots, and usually I don't cry, so. But from all of that, we moved here to Ontario, so I didn't realize being displaced, what I was missing out on. And so I moved here with my siblings, my older brother and my younger brother, and we were somewhat separated, so I actually never really got to live with my brothers again. My older brother aged out, so when we moved here, we received, westernized attempts at mental health support. I believe we had 1 or 2 therapy sessions. And then my older brother aged out. My older brother actually escaped, as I mentioned. And when he escaped, the RCMP actually took him to a neighboring community. Instead of trying to come into our home, they thought they would question my brother and accuse him of having to do something with it. My brother had nothing to do with it. The man who held us hostage was, I hate to say it, but a longtime family friend who had become obsessed with my mother. He himself was Indigenous as well. And he made up this idea that if my mother wasn't going to live with him, then he didn't want her or him to live at all. He had threatened her earlier the previous year to say that she wasn't going to live to see her next birthday, and neither was he. So when we moved here, we were separated. And unfortunately, the trauma of that evening and everything leading up to it and afterwards, family members, even, I'm sure, on my father's side, having this idea that maybe my brother did have something to do with it. He was 17. To give you an idea, that's nearly the age of my oldest. So it was a lot for him. And at the age of 29, he committed suicide. Like I said, this was my story. So I didn't think anything of it. And unfortunately, like many others, in Indigenous communities, we just feel this is the hand that we've been given. In 2017, my cousin reached out to me and asked me, she works for the Ontario Friendship Centers, and so she asked me if I would consider testifying for the National Inquiry. I said, absolutely, any way I can. I had always shared my story. I just didn't quite understand how my story fit into that. You know, I have all kinds of lovely trauma, and one of those things include identity trauma, which is awful. So in 2017, I testified. I went home. I testified there. I had family and friends with me. I had my adoptive parents. They didn't legally adopt me. I just say that. And they sat with me. My youngest was actually with me. He was only 2 months old, and I shared my family story. And I told the commissioner that something had to be done, and it had to end now. And then in 2019, Commissioner Michelle asked me if I would join the National Family Advisory Circle. And in that time, I met Robin. Also in that time, I actually went to Cheyenne's beautiful red dress exhibit, and we did not know each other. And I love how stories come together. It's, for me, a connection that I always make, that web, and I genuinely sit and think about how I'm connected to people. And now I wear this with great pride, and Cheyenne actually gifted it to me. So the fact that I went to that exhibit, and now that we're sitting here together, I don't know what you all believe in, but there's something for me that just connects us, right? So, since then, I joined the National Family Advisory Circle, and I had the honor of sitting alongside family members and handing over the calls for justice and the final report to the nation. And then I feel like I just walked down that journey, and I continued because I kept saying at the closing ceremonies to really anyone that would listen, like, let me know what you're doing. I want to continue doing this. And so I just thought I have to put myself out there, and I wanted to reclaim and reconnect. And I knew that no one else was going to do it for me. And so that was something I was going to do. And it wasn't just for myself, it's mostly for my children. A bonus, I get some healing out of it, but it's for my children. And it's for the memory of my father, my brother, and my mother, of course, as well. So my dress is right back there. It's this one here. I'm a recovering Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic community because I'm Métis. Please don't take offense to this if you are Catholic and this is your belief system, but I have shed that. Because a huge part of my identity as I've walked down this journey was never my given identity that was forced on me from colonization, that was forced on my father, and so many others. And so for me, I'm proud to say I'm a recovering Catholic. That's my daughter's communion dress. I sat for a while. Michelle actually gifted me a red dress that I could work with because I felt stuck. I just couldn't move forward. I thought about using the red dress that I wore to the closing ceremonies, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to give that up yet, if I had got to that point. And actually, I was talking with Carissa on the phone, and I think we were getting together for something for our collective, and I walked into the closet, and I saw the garment bag, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm gonna dye it. So I started to dye it. I have some beautiful videos that I'll share, and it looked like there was blood dripping from it as it dried outside in the sun. So there are some lighter spots, but I'm grateful for the sun to have shined down and bleached it out, taken it out a bit, the healing of it. And on the bottom, or in the middle part, sorry, I should say, I'll start at the top actually. That sash is, so with Métis, we can actually tie sash around our legs. And because my daughter was so tiny, I didn't give her a belted sash, I gave her that sash because she was so small, so one of these would just get lost on her, right, when she was smaller. So that's actually her first sash as well. And I thought it would be perfect to go on there. And then in the middle part, at the closing ceremonies, we were given little handbooks of just the calls for justice. And so that is one of the books that I was given at the actual closing ceremonies for the National Inquiry. And those are all 248 calls for justice on that dress. It's double-sided, so you won't see all of them. And then at the very bottom, it's, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's soil, it's dirt, it's the ground, it's the bones of my ancestors, it's where I came from. It is literally the soil from my home community in Manitoba. I had my adoptive parents mail it to me, and I used it and painted it on the bottom of the dress. I wish I could say those wheat pieces are for Manitoba. They are not. But that's to symbolize, I just have a connection with wheat from back home and the beauty of it. So when I do pass, I want to go back there. So, and the dress is to represent myself as my 9-year-old self, but to honor my father as well, because he is the one who taught me what I know. And if he didn't teach me all those things, if those things had been stripped from him, I would not be sitting here today to talk about it. So, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone here, and Michelle, and all of you for listening. And I heard an elder speak, and I say this when I share. Now that you've heard what I've said, what everyone else will say and has said, you can't unhear it, so what will you do with it? Yeah. Because if you just came here to listen today, and you don't leave and do something afterwards, I'm sorry for you.
Kinanas Komatin, Fallon, I'm so grateful for you, and thank you for sharing your story with us today. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, a member of this community who has long been fighting for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women, Marie Boward.
Thank you, Nyawe. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marie-Louise, and I am Mohawk, Irish, Scotch, and Welsh, with red hair and over 20-something years sobriety. So it's all about breaking the cycle, right? It's about breaking that cycle so that in our own ways that we can take care of ourselves, of course, but be there as in that good mind for my family and community, and to kind of eliminate, in some ways, prevention of where the road could lead me and where it led me, actually. So I'm going to start with sharing that there's a lot of secrets in families, like a lot of things that are not really talked about, you know, often. And I know with my family, we're Mohawks of Ganawaki and Akwesasne. The women in our family come from Akwesasne, and our grandfathers were in Ganawaki. And when I look back at some of the paperwork that has been shared with me, because there's a little bit of conflict of what I believe and what I think happened and what really happened. So I look at, we were very fortunate to get our family history. And in that family history, obviously we're Mohawk, so it's a lot of the women, right? And it goes really far back into our family and into our history. And I started looking at, they were baptized so damn early. I'm like, so my great-grandpa and all these people were baptized quite early into the Roman Catholic religion. And I too feel with Fallon and her sharing about, you know, just kind of being born into Catholicism. And I'm an Indigenous woman, you know. I wasn't really born into our Indigenous ways of knowing, culture, and being because of the intergenerational impact of the Indian residential school and what happened in that colonization and assimilation. And I don't know how far back it went back pretty far, because there's all that Christian stuff in there with the churches, the St. Regis Church. And I too mean no disrespect to anybody who is in line with their Catholic faith and their beliefs. And as a matter of fact, I work for the Niagara Catholic District School Board. Yeah. So, you know, I'm back. You know, and there's pros and cons to that too, to be honest with you. You know, there's a lot of pros and cons to that. And I'm somebody who always likes to take the good and see the good in things, but I will speak about the things that I might not appreciate or that I think don't align with my thought process or something, you know. But at the end of the day, I try to find the good in things. So I'm going to go bring it back to Lizzie. It was Elizabeth Monarch. It's my great-grandmother. I hold her in my hand today because she's in with the moon, right? So I don't normally get nervous, I'll tell you that. I say, oh, I'll talk to the president, the Pope, line them all up. But I was kind of nervous walking in here all of a sudden. I'm like, okay, it's hit me. And the crystal came in my bag. And it was ironic because my daughter gave this to me last night. And what is ironic is she's out there charging her crystals. So I was just happy to be practicing some of our spiritual ways. And obviously that's not something I learned in our Haudenosaunee traditional ways, but I learned that respect for our Mother the Earth and all that comes from it and how we can utilize these tools to help us. So Yahweh for this. So Lizzie, who's Lizzie? Because Lizzie is alive. Michelle-Elise is correct. Her spirit has been awakened. That spirit of Elizabeth Monarch, who was she? What was she? She's my great-grandma. And when I look at my grandma, so I didn't get to meet Lizzie, but I heard different things about Lizzie, but I sure met Maggie. So Maggie is my grandma, my mother's mother. My mother is Marilyn. A lot of you know Marilyn. So those of you that know Marilyn, well, Maggie was magnified 100 times from Maryland, because Maggie was a beautiful grandma, the lovely, lovely grandmother. But she was, I believe that I know she attended Indian residential school. I guess some of the conflict in my mind was whether it was day school or drove off to school. But I really feel like I had a conversation with her one time and we talked more about it. But regardless, it's all colonization, it's all assimilation, it's all systemic oppression and taking away our culture. So my granny, I called her Granny, and she liked that. And she was a force to be reckoned with, absolutely. But my granny grew up, how would I say? So I guess at about 16, she was going to the convent. She was going to go be a nun. That was what she wanted to do, I guess. She was in Toronto, out that way, so she couldn't have got there without being an Indian residential school, because you don't just go from there to there, right? So she was in the convent, and she was, you know, whatever, changing. She lost her ways, and that's where she was going. But I guess it's a good thing she got to come home, and the stories the way I remember it is that she met my grandfather. That's that little bit of Welsh in us. And I'm sorry, but he was I don't have many kind words for my grandfather, and part of that is because of the abuse, how he abused her, he abused my mother, my aunties, he abused me. He actually sexually abused me, you know. So I don't have a lot of respect for that man, and I know what he put my grandmother through. I remember when we got together, and we'd be at family gatherings, and there was a lot of drinking and partying and ending up with a lot of fights and birthday cakes and balloons popped or whatever the deal was, right? So my grandma was pretty wild. And it took about 10 cops to arrest her at least. And back then you can get bailed out for $12, and she used to call my dad to bail her out. And my granny used to hang out on these streets, and she had her purse full of coins and stuff because she always was ready, you know? That was in her days when she was a bit wilder and drinking, and then over time, she had changed a lot of those ways. But I remember me. I'm gonna jump to me for a minute here. So growing up in my family, understanding that my grandmother was a very kind, loving grandmother, but she didn't really overdo the nurturing part, like the hugging her children and showing my mother that love and showing the family. However, with the grandbabies now, she hold all the grandbabies and love up all the grandbabies, and she gave them all that love. So that's kind of what was happening with my mother and I. My mother loved me beyond words, but she didn't really hug me much, eh? She was like, I said, Mom, you're like hugging an iron board, you know? Like, gosh, could you just love me? Hug me, you know? And she would, but just the point is that disconnect, that emotional disconnect, that spiritual disconnect that we had. So growing up in a drug and alcohol and sexually abusive home, I became a lot like Maggie and Lizzie, because my mom used to talk about Lizzie. And what she shared with me might be different, but you know, Lizzie obviously was a very good woman, because my granny, she cooked, she cleaned, she gardened, she raised us, but she put up with bull crap from her husband, from this white man, you know. And I think about residential school and the abuse that happened to her. Grandma never talked about it. Actually, when I came home with sweetgrass one time from youth and elders, and I started burning it. And I remember, because I stayed with her at that time, she had cancer, and I seen a tear in her eye. And I was kind of confused, you know? And then she kind of shooed me away with the sweetgrass and said, you keep that downstairs and you burn it. So I realized that it was a memory. It was a memory that my grandmother had. It was a memory, you know, and that was part of it. And I tried to talk to her a bit about the residential school, and she says everything was fine. It was all right. Leave it alone. Well, I wasn't going back there again, because if you know Grandma, you're not going to go back there again. So I left it alone, right? But through that journey with growing up with this intergenerational trauma, with this disconnect, with this lack of nurturing and love and protection, because my grandfather hurt them, but then he got to hurt me, so I felt like I wasn't protected. And I was pretty angry. I was pretty mad at a lot of people, and I went out and I did a lot of things that I'm not very proud of. And I started to walk a life and a lifestyle that is certainly not the red road. And the three choices I had, and it was St. Paul Street, was the street that I roamed, and that they knew me and I knew them. And my choices in life were to be dead, dying, or in jail. And what happened on May 5th, 1994, I too was beat and left for dead, as was Lizzie. However, a miracle happened that day, and my angels came, and my grandmother came, my grandfather and my stepfather came, and they said, no, It's not your time. So I had to stay here. But I thought that was punishment because I was making a lot of bad choices. And I was doing things that were actually hurting people. Whatever, it's ignorance, it's greed, it's lack of knowing, it's pain. But I made choices that didn't ripple into our community and into our families in a positive manner. So I felt like that was my karma, that was my karma for those things that I had done. But the blessing is the Creator saved me. And the parallel with this was my grandmother, my great-grandmother Lizzie. She was murdered and beat and dragged and left in Niagara Falls / Lewiston, New York. And it was an African-American man that beat my granny and left her for dead. And she actually died the day before my mother's birthday. Would have been October 9th, 1955. And when I was on that wild road of mine, I spent a lot of times in Niagara Falls, New York, and Buffalo, New York, hanging out in the neighborhoods that also weren't very good hoods. And I remember my mom saying to me, Marie, I don't want you going there, Marie, and my granny, because I was staying with her too, but I didn't understand. Well, I thought, they're just trying to tell me what to do. Well, I go all the more. But then I realized one day, my mom said, my grandma was murdered over there. You're hanging out with all these people too, and now look at you and look at this, and and I'm like, it kind of hit me. Not hard enough to make me stop, but it hit me, and it made me think about it, So the beat down that I got was 1994, and the beauty of this is how I found my way as a wonderful, beautiful spiritual being and helper of mine. And auntie is Jackie Labonte in our Niagara Regional Native Center. It saved my life. It saved what I was talking about, breaking that cycle. And how did it save me? It was because I didn't learn what it was to be an Indigenous Mohawk woman. Do you think Grandma was talking about us being Mohawks? They knew by looking at us, but it wasn't something that you went around talking about in those times. And I'm a redhead. You know what I'm saying? And that whole identity thing that you talked about, and I'm sorry, but some of y'all out there are not very nice to people that come from a mixed background, and it's not acceptable. It is not acceptable. Yeah. We are all the Creator's children, and we were all gifted in our different ways. So I think, I guess I'll talk about the dress real quick. So Lizzie, and this was the beauty, coming into the community, coming into the culture, coming into the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the aunties, the uncles, the cousins, women that are breastfeeding, people that are out, doing things and making it happen. It just changed everything. And slowly but surely, my family started to come out to the Niagara Regional Native Center. And slowly but surely, we started to learn more about who we are and where we come from. And the beauty with this dress, Lizzie, is I answer too quick sometimes, like Michelle-Elise, I'm doing this, and and these dread dresses, and we really want to, bring these spirits alive. Oh yeah, I'll jump in, I'll do that. But it was like Fallon. All of a sudden, I felt disabled. And I couldn't move forward. I couldn't get through this. But then I realized it was my trauma, too, because I, too, was beat and left for dead. And that's, I think, part of that barrier. I've done a lot of healing work, and that's where we go to our sweat lodges, or we go to our medicine people. We sit by that fire. So I've worked through a lot of that, which helps me to sit here today in this good way to share with you all these stories. But the beauty about this is I had to ask my family for help. I said, look, I'm stunted. I really can't do this. Michelle needs this. There's emails going on. I got to produce something. Something's got to happen here. And it was beautiful. We got this beautiful dress that I think really represents a grandmother. She's, and the first thing when I saw that dress, I saw Lizzie. I wanted Lizzie on there, I was ambitious and said I was going to beat it. I'm not even a beater. Don't know what I was thinking there. But we improvised because I had a scarf that it was really sparkly and looked like little beads. So we put the Lizzie there. And then my aunties came out. I had my auntie come, and I had my sister come, and I had another cousin come, and another little one. And I think the one day we had the 4 generations there. We had quite a few of us, and we all came with our ideas, you know. So my one cousin, she's not here right now, but I do want to bring a special acknowledgement to her. She's my cousin Cheryl. She's very humble, but she's a real behind-the-scenes kind of gal. But she's learning that she's quite gifted and crafty with creating many magnificent things. So I told her what was going on, and she's got one of those boards, one of those things that make, I don't know, crickets. Yeah, she's got a cricket. So she got real busy with her cricket, and she, at the front of the dress, you'll see, actually, it's a moon that looks a lot like this. I love it. With crystals coming out of it. So when you look at that really close, you'll see that. And the moon was obviously to represent our great-grandma, and the crystals was to represent that healing. Now, I find in our family, we don't know our clan, we don't know our colors, and I'm thinking, now that I got all this stuff, I got to go talk to somebody at St. Regis because they got to be able to tell us this. So, but we're very fond of the bear and the bear medicine, and I find that a lot of us in our family have those good hands. We can help you with our hands and our energy. So we have the bear on the back to represent that healing and that medicine. And then we have MMIWG for the missing and murdered Indigenous woman. And then with the silver lining, right? So again, I wanted to do beadwork, but that wasn't happening. So that's some more really spiffy looking, probably Christmas wrap. And we put that around there because that silver lining is that healing and is that energy, is that those stars, that illumination, that beauty, you know. So that's kind of how she came about. Oh yeah, and then I got fancy at the top there with some more stuff that isn't beadwork, but it's quite lovely. And you know, I just fancied up around the arms for her and the neck, and just to balance out, because I do like a little bit of balance, believe it or not. But yeah, so we worked together and did it by hand in the cricket, and it was a really good opportunity though for our family to come together and share some more stories. And I know my uncle remembered that Lizzie used to go pick asparagus at the corner of York and Lake Street, some little things like that. So it got us talking, and Lizzie is alive. So I want to just say Nyawagoa to Michelle-Elise and her vision, and to all of our sisters here, and the continual collaboration. And you know, and one of Robin's right, like for many years I've been working on Sisters in Spirit, and October 4th we will be gathering again. I haven't figured out the details because we have to get past this in order to get to that. That's how I work. So anybody who knows me, let me get through this weekend and then we'll plan that one. So we're going to work on something. And last year I had heard a lot of really good things about Fallon, and that was my first time meeting Fallon. And it was my sister who did it last year. She just kind of put that, I guess my mom said something to her and she said something to me, so all of a sudden we were planning. And then Fallon came, and we put it together in less than, like, I don't even know, probably 4 days, if that, or it was 2 weeks before the date, right? So we got it together, and it was absolutely beautiful, and we're going to do it again this year. So I encourage you to, October 4th, I don't know, go on Facebook, we'll put it out there somewhere, somehow, and join us. And as our other guests have shared with you, you know, what are you going to do with this intergenerational trauma? Like, I could have been gone. And if the Creator would have taken me that day, I'm going to tell you something. My family life would look so much different. I'm a very, I make things happen kind of person. I'm sure I could do stuff up there too, but, you know, I'm really thankful that I am continued to be here with us, and recognizing that trauma from my great-grandparents and how that rippled down, and understanding now why my mom and my granny were so not okay with my lifestyle. And, you know, with that lifestyle, it really doesn't bring us down many good roads. The only positive that I want to bring forward is now I can relate. I can relate to other people. I know what it feels like when money rules you, or you just don't FTW kind of attitude, you know. And it's not a good place to be. So if you or anybody are in that place, I want to remind you that we have an amazing community. We have an amazing support in this community, and I want you to share about what's happening with our missing and murdered Indigenous women, boys, girls, two-spirited. I want you to share that this has rippled into our lives. And I'm proud to say, though, that my children are pretty much alcohol-free. They're not really big on that, and they do try to follow some of our ways. So I'm going to be patient because it takes time. And I just want to, again, thank my family for being here and for each of you. And also, I know that this isn't easy, and I just ask you to don't carry any of this pain or hardship with you. Just let that go when you walk out these doors and release that. It doesn't belong to you and it doesn't belong to me. I've already given it to our Creator and to our spirit guides and our helpers, and they're taking care of that. So this is just really a happy moment because Lizzie is alive. My family is together. We are talking, we're learning, we're growing, we're sharing. And I believe that she gave her life for this. So I'm going to honor Lizzie, and I'm going to honor our teachings and just say, Yahweh, thank you, but ask you to please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. We have helpers over here for a reason. This is deep-rooted, and it just doesn't happen in Indigenous communities and families. And I recognize that, so I want you to know that. Yahweh, thank you. Kanalunkwa.
Kinanas Kamaten, Marie, I am so grateful for you and thank you for sharing your story with us. It is my pleasure to introduce our final speaker today, Vanessa Brusso.
So before I start sharing my story, I wanted to share the story about my eagle feather that I'm holding today. My sister's been missing for almost 19 years. It'll be 19 years in December, and it was her birthday on August 1st. I woke up that morning and told my husband, I want to find an eagle feather. And that was my way of connecting with my sister. So we went to Rock Point Provincial Park, and we did some walking around there, and I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to find anything. And my husband was ahead of me, so I always thought, oh, well, he's going to find it first, you know. But he always says, well, I'm blocking the spider webs. That's his excuse. So anyways, he's ahead of me, and he doesn't see the eagle feather. It wasn't meant for him to see. And I found it right in the center of the path. And I picked it up, and I knew instantly that my sister was with me today. And I knew that she was telling me to keep going, to keep strong, and to keep telling these stories. And if you look closely, you could see that it looks like there's a woman praying on the bottom of the feather. So this is my stolen sister feather that I will always carry when I speak about our sisters, and that's it. Anything else, I'm not gonna, I have other eagle feathers, but this one's specifically for our sisters, and that's how I took it. And I put a little red dress on the bottom. So I'm gonna hold it because it gives me a lot of strength, and it keeps me honest and grounded, and it's just very important to me in my beliefs growing up and everything. So first of all, I want to thank these beautiful ladies for having me here, because this isn't my community. I didn't grow up here, but this is the community I choose. This is where I want to be, and this is my home now by choice. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's important to understand history before I get into, you know, just the gruesome details of my missing sister. My grandfather, at 19 years old, was stolen by ship in Sanikiluaq, Nunavut, from his family. He was traditionally married, and he was brought to London, Ontario, to the sanatorium, the Beck Memorial Sanatorium. He was kept there for 7 years for tuberculosis. They scraped his lungs, they removed one of his lungs, they experimented on him, and then they told him that he couldn't go back home because of these operations. He required sheltered employment. And they made him wash the dishes there for 2 years. My grandfather, and I know this because I requested the records, and I have 5 pages of his 7-year stay in that hospital. So my grandfather it also shows in his records that the RCMP took him on summer vacations. I don't think RCMP take you on summer vacations, and my grandfather never spoke of this, so I could only imagine what they did to him. So finally, my grandpa saved enough money from washing their dishes to have a visit back home, where his family thought he was dead for all that time. His wife remarried because she thought he was gone. I could only imagine how my grandfather felt knowing that people just moved on. But back then, there was no way of communicating. This was in 1946 to about 1951, 52. And so my grandfather begged and begged. He found out about Moose Factory Hospital in the James Bay. And he begged and begged and begged, and it's in the letters, that's how I know he begged, because he was homesick for the North. They finally allowed him to move to Moose Factory Hospital. And when he moved to Moose Factory Hospital, he became an X-ray technician with zero education, all from just being experimented on, X-rayed himself, and he learnt, and his resiliency. So my grandfather was the X-ray technician of the Moose Factory Hospital for over 30 years with one lung. And he helped his own people because his own people up from Northwest Territories and Nunavut would come down to Moose Factory Hospital, and he would speak to them in their language. They wouldn't have to feel awkward. So my grandfather met a woman there. She was an orderly woman. She was also Welsh, and that's my grandmother. And my grandmother had three daughters with him, and then she abandoned her daughters. My mother was only about 2 years old when her mother abandoned her. So my grandfather remarried, and this is important because what I'm going to share with you about my mom, I want a little more understanding of where she comes from. The woman that raised my mom went to residential school, so her upbringing wasn't the greatest. My mom was abused and things like that. She went to Indian day school in Moose Factory. But my grandfather, because of what he went through, he thought his world was dying. He thought the white world was the new way and that he needed to raise his kids so that they could survive in the new world. He didn't teach my mom her language. He didn't teach her to work with sealskin, you know, and because he had money and worked at the hospital, he was able to send his kids to boarding school instead of them attending residential school. So my mom was sent to Timmins, Ontario, and that's where she went to boarding school. And she wasn't even there for maybe 8 months, and she got pregnant with me by a married man and she was only 15, and my father, who I didn't realize was my father at the time, he was 32. And he's Ojibwe. So my mother realized that she disappointed her dad, that she couldn't tell him that she was pregnant. So my mom ran away with another man, a white man. And they closed their eyes and picked a spot, and it ended up being Hamilton. And that's where I was born, was Hamilton, Ontario. And my sister was also born there as well. I have the one that's missing, my younger sister. After my sister was born, my mother was sterilized without consent. She woke up and she had a full hysterectomy on her second daughter at 18 years old. The life and the hardest thing that people need to understand is the way the world was back then in the 70s and 80s compared to what it is now, and how Indigenous women were treated then. So my mom finally had the courage to tell her father that she got pregnant and she had 2 kids, and she moved us back to Timmins, where she went to boarding school. That's where my stepfather is from. So growing up, we were very poor. My stepfather got in a mining accident and he couldn't work anymore, and my mom had no education because she was pregnant at 15. So we were very poor, a lot of abuse. My babysitter, which was my stepfather's nephew, abused me sexually. And I was getting beaten physically a lot by my stepfather, me and my sister. My mother, being so young and not knowing how to be a mom because nobody was a mom to her, she involved herself in volunteer work just to escape, you know, and not realizing the damage that was happening to us at home, or not wanting to realize it. My mother was the president of the Friendship Center for over 20 years, and she hid that she was in a domestic violent relationship the whole time. And that's really embarrassing for me because if anybody knows me, I'm a very honest person, sometimes a little too honest. So I was very, you know, hurt by that. And, you know, and there's lots of, I've done extensive therapy, obviously, but there's lots of, you know, why would my mother do this and things like that. So after I started becoming about 12 years old, 13 years old, my stepfather changed the physical abuse to sexual abuse. And I should also say that I was in and out of foster care for the abuse, the physical abuse, full of bruises. I remember going to school and not being able to sit in the chair because I was so bruised. I was in and out of foster care with my sister. And, you know, this is just something that we thought was normal. We grew up, this is how life was. We didn't know any different. So when the sexual abuse started, I finally had the courage to say something at 15 years old, and my mother didn't believe me. So eventually I ended up going to the police and telling them what happened and things like that, and they put me in a foster home. I finally had my mom convinced, and I hope there's no children in here, but I finally had my mom convinced that, you know, what was happening was real because I told her the sounds my stepfather made when he was finished. And I know that that's disgusting to hear, but it needs to be known that this is what happens to us. She finally believed me, and she felt horrible, you know, and she finally was able to leave that man when my younger sister was 18 and I was 20. And she told me that she believed that her dad would be so mad at her if she ever left him, and that's why she never left. Now, I know there seems to be a lot of excuses. My mother is passed now, and I'll get into that as well. But I tell you all this because a lot of this is learned behavior. My sister was in a domestic violent relationship and didn't leave, even though, you know, there was times he put her in the hospital. He held her kid hostage with police. He went to jail. And she still wouldn't leave. And I think it's important to share this so that you know that I'm thankful that I have the strength I have today, that I've always had the strength to respect myself and love myself. But I also need people to understand that we can't put blame on our sisters. You know, it's something that we need to, you know, try to understand with an open heart. So 2 years before my sister went missing, she was put in the hospital by her common law spouse. And at that time, my family told her that he's not invited to any family functions. We don't want to see him. So she stood by his side, and we didn't get to see her either. So eventually, you know, after a couple years, We wanted to see my sister. We wanted to have a relationship with her. So we accepted her common law for who he was. About a month before my sister went missing, she had a black eye. My mom went to the police and told the police about the black eye. And the police went there, and my sister said, "Oh, I walked into a hydro pole." She protected him again. The police left. Now, this is going back to 2004. Now the laws are changed that they don't just leave, but back then they just left. A couple weeks before my sister went missing, she was asking me for divorce lawyers, separation lawyers, because she wanted to finally leave him. She was worried that he was going to hold her kids and she wouldn't be able to have them, because that's what he told her. So she really wanted to get a lawyer and, make sure that she could have her children. So it was on December 13th, my sister asked me to babysit, but I already had plans. So I told her I couldn't babysit. So she got the common law's sister to babysit my two nephews, who were 5 months old and 2 years old at the time. And she was a really good mom, like I was the bad auntie giving candies and things like that to them. And, she would get so mad it was only nutritional stuff. And I think it's because we grew up so poor that she wanted her kids to have the best. Well, her and her common law went to a house party that night. And from witnesses, they say that her common law accused her of flirting with another married man. And my sister got upset and left. He followed her. She was never seen again. I was only 25 years old at the time and very naive. I probably had the mindset of maybe 17 or 18. I come from Timmins, Ontario, which is a very northern, small community, and not to put ignorance on myself, but I wasn't the most smartest kid. So I believed that she wasn't gone. I never thought my sister would be dead. I never thought that she would be missing. I never thought any of that. So I left messages on the voicemail on the December 15th, 16th, 17th. I went to the house with Christmas presents to drop them off to, the plants were in the window, the stroller was still there was no foot marks. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they went to his family in Sudbury. I thought that's where she was. Well, she wasn't in Sudbury. Christmas came, and I was so mad that she didn't call me. And I'll never forget being so mad at her. I was so mad, like, who does this? What kind of sister? And we were close, like, we were very close. I talked to my sister 3-4 times a day. And for her not to call me, she didn't have a cell phone, but still, call me from someone's house, and she didn't call me. So Boxing Day came, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to call the landlord and see what's going on, if he's seen any of them. Well, I called the landlord, and he said, I didn't see any of them, not him, the kids, nobody, So I thought, okay, well, they're definitely all together somewhere. Me and my mother went to the bingo hall for New Year's Eve, because we're sober, and we went to bingo hall, something to do on New Year's Eve, and we seen the common law sister that babysat, and she came up to us and said, did you hear about Pam? We said, no, what about Pam? Oh, she left him. I'm just going to say him. I won't say his name. And she said, I said, well, where's the kids? And she said, he has them. Right then and there, I knew something was absolutely wrong. My mother-in-law, I left the bingo hall, and we went to the police station to report my sister missing immediately. we got there and the police told us that, oh, it's New Year's, she's probably out drinking and she'll be back in a few days. Even though they knew she was in a domestic violent relationship because they went to the house multiple times. He went to jail for it. They didn't care. They didn't want to be bothered on their New Year's Eve shift. So my mother and I, we don't have a lot of money. So we go asking our friends for donations of $20 here and there to print posters for my sister, to look for her and put up posters. And I still have the list of names that donated. It's probably about $100 that we got to print posters. We called all her friends to try to see, where is she? But we couldn't find her. I tried to believe at first that she did leave. That's probably what I wanted to believe. I even faced him a little bit because I wanted to see my nephews. Until I asked him to come on the media with me to help me plead for my sister, he wouldn't do it. And that's when I knew he was responsible for my sister's disappearance. He ran away with my nephews out to Alberta and met another woman there. He ended up choking that woman and beating her up. And my mom had to go get my nephews out of Children's Aid. So my mom fought for custody of my nephews and spent about $30,000 on a lawyer to try to get my nephews out of his care. She got joint custody every second weekend or something like that she was able to have them. Because he was not charged and there was no remains, there was nothing that they could do. On New Year's Eve, the same day that we reported my sister missing, my mom passed away at 45 years old. And the reason she died was because when we brought her to the hospital by ambulance, they kept asking me how much did she have to drink. My mother didn't drink, but she was delusional. She thought it was summertime and it was winter. She was acting like a 2-year-old, trying to take off her pulse monitor. Her last words to me were, "Why are you crying, Danis?" Meaning daughter. "I'm not going nowhere." She didn't believe that she would die. That or she's still with me today. That's what I try to believe, is that she knew and she was going to be here. She died of pneumonia. And because they didn't treat her right away, it went into her bloodstream. We tried giving her blood transfusions, and it wasn't enough. She died on her way to being medevaced to the airport to go to Toronto for better service and care, and she didn't make it in the ambulance. I'm lucky that my nephews and my sons went to school together. So I was able to attend all their Christmas activities, school concerts, be in their lives, check on them. But my nephews weren't safe either. They got beaten over and over, put into foster care, put into my home, and brought back to him over and over. The systems are broken. So my goal, because of everything I went through, my goal was to raise my children the best that I could. That's all I cared about. My kids are now 19 and 21, and I did a great job. So when my kids became adults, that's when I said, okay, I did my job with them, now I need to do what I need to do. So I attended intense therapy by Dr. Smiley in Toronto. She's a Métis doctor. Absolutely love her. She's still my person. And I'm very thankful for her. I spent 4 or 5 years doing intense therapy with her. And then I felt like, okay, now what? What do I do now? So I got my records. I got my children's aid records and I got my police records. My school records were destroyed. And when I got my records, I could not believe the racism that was in my records. So I got a lawyer and I filed a human rights complaint against the Timmins Police and the Children's Aid Society because they continued to do this to me and my sister from the time we lived in Timmins to the time my sister disappeared. I also decided that I was going to sue my childhood abuser in a civil litigation, the one that babysat me. And when I did that, my stepfather committed suicide in fear that he was next. He killed himself on December 24th of 2020. So today I'm still in civil litigation with my childhood abuser, and he tells me that I'm crazy, I mistaken him for someone else, and then I consented, even though I have all the records with his name in it. So I have no fear about that. And I'm very thankful for the strength I have to be here to speak about it, because I know it's not an easy thing. And sometimes, you know, and that's why I'm thankful for this, because this gave me the sign to say, keep going, keep pushing, keep doing what you're doing. So I don't care about money. I grew up from nothing. I don't need money. I know that money doesn't do anything for people. I want change. And that's why I'm here, is because I want the laws changed, I want the systems changed, and I'm not going to stop. I want things better for all Indigenous peoples. These systems were built on a genocide. They're not here to protect us. So if that means I have to share my truth and pain to move forward for our grandkids and great-grandkids, then that's what I'll do, and that's what I have been doing. So I work also for the federal government, and people might be blown away by that, you know? But you gotta get in the systems to change them. Right now, I'm responsible for recruiting Indigenous language keepers. I take a lot of pride in that job because I want our people to have our languages, all the languages, you know, and I want our languages to be exposed and shown so that we could have that and relearn all of that. So I'm very blessed where my career has taken me. I started in the mailroom, just so you know, but I moved my way up. But I also share a lot of this truth within the government. I present all the time. I'm a facilitator for the Kairos blanket exercise. I teach territorial acknowledgements. So I do a lot of that on the inside. And it's not easy to work for the government. But I truly believe that we need to walk together in this path and to make Canada a better place for everybody. I do not hate white people. I do not hate people that work for the government. You know, these systems have been in place for a long, long time, and they need to be changed. So when I share this isn't about shame or guilt or blaming anybody. This is about making change and walking together and understanding. So now that you understand what my life's been like, you could see why I am the way I am. You could understand why I want things changed. So again, I'm very thankful to be in this community. This, like I said, this is my choice to be here. I finally, you know, at 43 years old, I finally get to decide where I want to live, and this is where I've chosen to live for the last year. And I'm very thankful for the connections I've made, because without these connections, you know, I wouldn't feel fulfilled and full. You know, it makes a big difference to me to have these connections. But yeah, I don't want to say too much more because I talk lots. But I'm a very open book. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'm very open to that. Even I'm a vendor here. I have a booth set up. You could question me. I've made all this by hand. You could question any of my arts or anything like that. But just know that I'm here, to walk with you, beside you. Miigwech, nakamik.
Kinanas Kamatin Vanessa, I am so grateful for you and thank you for sharing your story with us today. I want to say in Cree, the highest acknowledgement, and we say it at the end of prayer, is hi hi. So I want to say hi hi to our 4 panelists and honor the gift that you have brought to all of us today. And I want to say hi hi to all of you as well for holding space for these important stories. We have time now for questions, and I want to open it to the floor. You've all been listening so patiently, and I want to see if there is anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question. Yes, I'll bring a mic to you if you'd like.
I don't think the last speaker told us about the dress.
Oh, Vanessa, would you like to speak about your dress?
No, the one you created.
Oh, yes, sorry, I talk so much about everything else. So my dress is right here. It says Pam on it. I'm just gonna, so I could see. So I added 4 small red dress pins to it to represent the 4 directions, as I believe that's where my ancestors are watching me from, and also to represent balance. I added my sister's picture in the middle because she was a mother, and I think it's very important for people to know that she was a mother and that she was a good mother. I've also added jingle cones to the top because that represents healing, with some pretty beads, obviously, just because I like to add beads. And her name's in sealskin because my sister's Inuk. I'm Inuk and Ojibwe because my dad's Ojibwe, but my sister's just Inuk. So that's why I used the sealskin. But yeah, she's always with me, and I felt very honored to make that dress, and I'm very happy that it's going around and being told, I feel like her spirit's with it, and yeah, so thank you for asking me that.
I just wanted to share something that I meant to share earlier. While we were on this journey, I was gone away one weekend, and everyone they were getting together. And when I was gone away, one youth that I had the honor of working with last year was a part of an elders and youth initiative with Sept San George, our hereditary chief from out west. He's an incredible man, and he is working towards dismantling the Indian Act and uplifting leaders, youth leaders. And so while we were gone away, I actually had someone here in Niagara, the power of social media, share a missing poster. And it was one of our youth. So while we were journeying through this, I saw her face and I knew right away. It's not my story to tell, her story, so I don't want to share her name. It's known now, it's out on social media. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, knowing the statistics, she wouldn't be found. And the next day, I got up and I walked out to the beach, and a butterfly came in front of me, and I knew right away. And later that day, we found out she was actually one of the 2 recent victims found on the downtown east side of Vancouver. She was one of the 2 that the police, the RCMP, failed to do an immediate search and put a call out. And so she was in fact found dead. And so we got together and we had ceremony, everyone that was a part of that initiative. So I just wanted to share that with you, that while we are doing this, there are still women, men, 2-spirited, that are going missing and are being murdered. And one other thing I wanted to share was that I have a connection to Jackie as well. A part of this, when I first moved here, this isn't my community either, but now, I mean, I always say they're stuck with me now, whether they like it or not. And yes, the Friendship Center is a huge part. I actually said to my friend Jamie, I don't know why I'm so emotional. I've been lack of sleep. Usually I don't cry this much. I shared last night to Jamie, hearing drumming, I said, I haven't felt like really depressed or sad in so long. I say it as I cry. The irony, since I've joined drumming, I'm not a good singer, but I'm so grateful for this community. So I have my community back home, but it's a part of feeling lost, right? Not having it and being with people. So, and Jackie was actually in my life when I moved here when I was 9. I've known her that long. My uncles reached out to her when we moved here, and Jackie and Carissa, they all hosted a barbecue. I don't remember it whatsoever, but I guess I've been welcomed into this community a long time ago without realizing it, and I just had to find my way back to it, so thank you.
Any questions from the audience? All right, I'm going to bring the mic up to you.
Oh, no.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, this is kind of hard for me to talk about. My son is in the penitentiary. And he's coming out soon. He's really made progress in there. But he also was abusive to his wife. Just once that I know about, but they separated, they're apart. But how do I, as his mother, what would you say my best route to just being supportive for him as he comes out? Like I really want to go for a drink today. Something led me here. Right here. I was just walking and so how do we help these men as well as women? That's the question.
I think I'll jump on that one. When I look to this community again, we have men, as you see, we have 2 amazing male beings right here in this room, taking care of our spirit. I find that the Niagara Regional Native Center, the Fort Erie Friendship Center, they have programs, I'm a Kind Man, so you could encourage that. But as a mother, Tom Porter spoke about this last night. We had a little conversation, and it was around the domestic violence and everything, and he says, you know, that we as mothers, we need to, I don't know, how did he say it? Like, we need to teach them to be kind. We need to teach them anger management. We need to teach them other ways. And most of all, like, that connection is the correction. So I don't know if that really answers it, but just knowing that there's a community here and knowing that there are very minimal supports, though, for our male energies out there, and it's a sad state of affairs. And maybe that's something where you get mobilized and empowered, and instead of putting your energy to, you know, that negative place where we know that's going to bring you, right? You put it towards that kind of that fight, I guess, in a sense, you know, and continue to come to the community, come out to Monday night drumming. When you become stronger as a mother, our children are stronger as well. I'm a firm believer in that. And try to lead by example, and by you making that choice to be here and not go up the road and drink, that's already a good example, right? So I encourage you, and that's one thing I wanted to say that my mother taught me was sobriety. And that's what helped break this cycle. And I'd like to believe that my children have not been sexually abused. I know they haven't been physically abused because we use water. But, you know, But that's just a little bit I would have to say is just try to connect with your community, make your way around, and with your son has to want it too, though, right? But we have amazing energies and programs that can help. And there's the Aboriginal Health Center that Jackie Labonte works at. They have mental health supports, child and youth supports. They have family counseling. They've got it all. And that's right on Queenston Street where the old Quest building, or the Quest building is, so across from the hospital. So, and that's the thing, right? When we're experiencing these things, I had to look, because what I knew what to do was what was landing me where my grandmother landed, you know, and that is reaching out to your community, asking for help, and volunteer work is what got me every job that I ever received and helped get me into these different portals. I started off with the Niagara Regional Native Center. I had a lot of helpers there that helped me, and I was very lost, did not know my way, and here I am today sharing love and light and knowledge and teachings and ways with our communities. So I wish you the best, but that's
the good deeds.
okay, perfect. Yahweh.
Thanks.
Oh, a question from Sabrina.
I don't have a question. I have a comment. I'm a loud talker, so I'm just going to talk. But I wanted to share, I'll stand up because I wanted to see you. I have a little bit I want to share with you, and it's only because of this journey that I've been on myself. And in my Anishinaabe creation story, we're taught that this whole universe was created from thought and intention. So maybe it's watching how your thoughts go, right? So, and it's hard to stop them from going this way. Trust me, I know. I've gotten myself into a heck of a lot of trouble letting my thoughts go dark. But try your hardest to keep them to healing thoughts for your son.
Today
right?
I tried my hardest. That's
Yeah.
why I'm here.
And we're so very proud of you for coming here instead of going elsewhere. So thank you for coming and sharing a little bit of that for you. But we'll keep you in, like I run the women's drum group. I don't know if anybody's heard about us. No. We're like a collective of women that started out in 2015, right? And why we started was because we're single moms and we wanted to get together to be there for each other. Now what we've turned into now is like a 2-time award-winning drum group that's pretty famous in the Niagara region anyway. If you get outside Niagara, you're going to ask about us. But we've learned to be there for each other and accept each other just as human to human. Not, you know, Opie will sometimes get mad at me because I'm this person over here and she's like, you got to calm down, you got to bring it back this way. But we all still love each other, right? At the basic bare bones of it, we're humans and we need to love and care about each other as humans despite all these other things that are labels and stuff placed upon us. So if you ever want us to sing for you or to help you in any way, just we're on Facebook, Strong Water Singers. You can add us, we'll help any way we can. I know there's like 70 something of us, but we're loving women. Not that, like, don't put it out there, we're loving women, but like, so try to keep your past positive. I know it's hard, but it works. So that's all.
And I'd just like a short comment. I have these visions and I see them coming true. I'm blessed that Creator has allowed me to be part of that too. So the next time I look out, I'm going to see a two-spirit out there telling their story. That's my vision. And we all come together in a collective. How Creator can work. Passionate. I love you guys. I love everybody. I love you. I love women. Everybody. I love all the kids. I love beautiful baby dog.
I love you. You see that? Yeah. That's representing grandmother Jackie Labonte. That is what, I don't know what was going to share with you. I know that there's, yeah, so you're right in line.
Jackie Labonte here. Yeah,
She's doing pottery
Oh,
right now. Yeah, she's attending a pottery.
I'm going to ask a question for you, the four of you. I'm teaching a class this semester. I'm not supposed to be, but I got it in the last minute. And it's called Pedagogies of Indigenous Arts. And one of the things I'm trying to share with students is how important art is to healing our collective well-being. And the red dress is very much a creative practice. And I wonder if you could share with us how in creating your dress that promoted your healing and part of your journey. And I open that to all of you.
All right. For me, it was like to come out that I'm a recovering Catholic. You know, I still have family who are very much intertwined in all of it. And then I have other family members who have the same view as me. And so just creating that space for myself to do that was healing, to go through it and just process all of it while I was doing it as well. And then to really pay honor to my father gave it like another level of healing as well. Because I feel as though as an Indigenous man, as we just had in this conversation, it's left on the, I don't want to say it, but left on the back burner. And so to be able to put him in MMIWG means a lot.
It was really hard for me to create my dress. I had a lot of times, like just like you said, where you're doing it and then you just have to stop and you just can't continue. So I have to thank my family. It was really hard for me to do it, but they were able to step up and help me. But I know that we talk about this issue so much, but we also, like I do very much try and involve that men are going missing as well. But when I had asked the males in my family to be the hands on the dress, none of them wanted to be because they understood what that meant, that was the abuse on there. But we talked and we all put our hands on there instead of just them, because we needed to be able to support them and they needed to support me. And one of the things that I didn't say earlier was I just hand stitched that ribbon on there, and that took me all day. But I left it hanging on the side because that story is not done, and they weren't able to tell their story like I am. So I am trying to do that in the best way possible. But it was really hard. But that's why I had the jingles on the bottom, so that when I see that dress, that's what I see, and I can see that the healing is there, and that the sound will come from that dress when it's out. So yeah.
I guess, so my quick comment would be, I don't feel that I'm very creative or crafty much at all. However, I think for that healing piece of it, though, again, asking my family for help and watching my cousin Cheryl like flourish, because when I say she's awkwardly shy / humble, she really is. And just seeing her like get busy, and then she was so proud, and then Auntie come and looks at, oh, that's perfect, and she's like, oh, like it was like we were a bunch of little kids in a candy shop, you know, bringing all the ideas. So yeah, it really opened up a creative portal, and it opened up a connection with my aunties and cousins and nieces and all of us. So it was beautiful. Yeah, Yahweh for that question.
So for myself, the red dress is so important to me, and it's been important to me for a long time. And the reason why is that I want my sister to be remembered in a beautiful way, you know, in a respectful, beautiful way. And that's why I advocate with the red dress, everything I do. I've actually made over 600 red dresses, and I'll continue. I'm not even joking you. I work, I go for a walk, and I make red dresses. That's my life, besides my TikToks and stuff like that. But for this red dress, what it meant for me more is to be a part of this community, to be with these women. That's what it meant for me more, because I make them all the time, right? But this one was special because I knew it wasn't going to be alone. You know, I knew that it was going to be with the other women and the ones that are here as well. You know, to be a part of that togetherness. That's what it meant so much to me, was for that. But I am very creative. I love making stuff and challenging myself and things like that. So, you know, I just wanted to be a part of, and, you know, to create that awareness. And I'm always willing to be a part of that. And like I said, I'm very thankful for these women.
Now, this is a harder question to answer, but there's a common thread that I heard throughout all of your stories, which is systemic violence and the failings. Well, are they failings, or are the systems working exactly the way they should be? What has to be done? How do we change this? And I open it to all of you.
I just have the mic, so I'm just going to be real quick, because we all talkers up here. But for me, like when I was beat and left for dead, and they found the crowbar, they found the bloody jacket, they found the creep. He escaped to another town, and they actually tried to blame my uncle. And my uncle was always my protector, always my protector. And it was ironic, so... and the police officers that came, Sergeant Sauter and Lightfoot, they said it was an open and shut case. And I said, oh, is it? They said, oh, yeah. I said, okay. I don't know how confident I was about that. So basically I held it to him, and he said that he would quit his job if this didn't happen. So of course we went to the first trial, knocked out because I had said something that discriminated this guy. I said he was in jail, and he learned how to do etchings in jail. So that got booted out. Then another jury came, and that got booted out. So he got off. And how do we make that change? I think it's what our sister here is doing, to hold them accountable. I threatened to blow up the courthouse, and everything was all crazy back then, and I got in trouble for that too, and whatever, but they failed me. And I looked at him after that, and I said, so, you quitting your job? And he looked at me. I said, I know you're not. I said, you have a family, you do what you gotta do. I'll get my justice my own way. And it's all good. But I haven't really done what I feel like could and should be done, so. But I see Michelle.
I think we have one last question from the audience, and I want to come. I'll bring you a mic.
More a comment than a question. I just want to say how incredibly inspirational all of you are, and so brave to share these stories and to have these difficult conversations, and to look at it in the face, and to transform it and alchemize it into something positive. And I think you all are so amazing. And these dresses, each of them has a unique personality, and really gives me a sense of how each of them was a full person. And I just want to say that, you know, domestic abuse doesn't just, it also exists in all communities, and you know, have my own stories to share around that, coming out of an abusive relationship, and calling the police and them not doing anything, and you know, and then another situation where they actually ended up throwing me in jail for supposedly threatening my kids, which, if anyone knows me, that is completely absurd. And so the system is broken, and so I want to thank you for the work you're doing to transform it, not just like for all women of color, for LGBTQ, Two-Spirited, to all these people that are on the margins and don't get a fair shake. And you can see it in the justice system, in the health system. And I just want to have so much respect for you, and I just want to say a deep, deep thank you.
Any other questions? Not much. Any other questions for our panelists? Yes.
So what can we actually do, and who do we ask the questions of how things need to be changed? Who and where and how do we do that? We want to be supportive, we want to be good allies. But I don't know where to send the information, so it's getting not just passed over by some clerk in the PM's office and sending you a thank you email, but there's never a response that actually takes any action. So how do we make that? How do we help make that happen?
One first step, have the conversations around your dinner table. I heard that a long time ago and it stuck with me. That's where change happens. Having those conversations, bringing friends, family to things like this, the walks, that's, come out, support. There are 231 calls for justice. Take one and put it into action yourself. You can. There are calls for justice specifically for Canadians. Robin has put a call to action into place on her own entirely. And let me tell you, it's making huge shifts within the education system at a university level. She's quite literally the person who's making the movement. So there are, believe me. She was clapping for us, but we should be clapping for her because, we presented to a university and nothing was brought to the table except for what Robin has created. So it is that simple for those calls for justice, for an individual to enact them and move them forward. It doesn't have to be big. A lot of times we think that it has to be this big action, and just like the ripple effects of colonization, well, we can counteract that. We can make a tidal wave with moving forward with positive actions and positive change, and it will ripple through community. I just say talk about it, keep going, pick a call for justice, and actually call out. I'm a fan of calling in, but when it comes to the government, call them out. And we can't change the systems. They were literally made to work the way they are. They were built on a foundation that was broken for the broken cracks. But what we can do is go in those cracks and figure out how to rebuild it, because we don't want to work with what's there right now. So.
Sorry. I want to thank each and every one of you, Chimigwich, Nyawe, to everyone that's come out today. This is what we talk about, starting to make a difference. That movement is you participating. It's already going in the right direction. It's going forward. And like most of them said, is that this system was not set up for our success. It was set up for us to fail. So we need to take it upon ourselves to go out and keep marching forward. Keep having our voices heard, find platforms so that people can see, hear, and understand us. This is what these women are doing. We're going to continue to do this, and we're going to keep bringing this, like I said, through Turtle Island so that we can bring justice, start the calls to action, and have people hear it. We want to start that movement. So come with us. When you hear there's a red dress exhibit going on or there's a walk going on, bring your family, bring your business. Let the institution that you're working with know about this. This is how we really, truly start transformable change. It's one thing about talking about it. It's another thing about putting action to that. I want to thank everyone so very much, and of course to 40 Erie Native Friendship Center, for being here today and bringing the medicines. And that was so thoughtful, so healing, and I can't thank you enough for being here. It meant so much to all of us. I know that even with our panel. So I know that I would just like to give him a hand of applause. I know that. topics like this, you could feel them lifting from the smudge that we had. And it was really important that those medicines were here for us today, for all of us. So I really am very, very grateful. And of course, Jen, the other day when I was speaking to her, says, I'll be there. I'll get everyone there. So I'm really, really grateful. Chimigwich. And of course, to our elder, Dave LeBay. We not only all love you very much, but a lot of us turn to you on many occasions, and you've always been there to support us. And when we're talking about our women, we support our men, but our men support us. And today, when these men were walking around, they were supporting all of us. And that's what that balance is. And when we truly start to look at respect, reciprocity, balance, peace, harmony, love. When we truly love something, love someone, whether it's the trees out there, would you go and harm them? No. We need to teach and bring back some of the 7 grandfather teachings. We need to really come back to what is love, the original instructions from Creator. And once we start to really build on that, we won't have red dresses because we won't hurt one another. Same thing with our natural world. A lot of things, a lot of pauses, I know, very difficult. The exhibit will be open after 3 o'clock today. There are more dresses that will tell their story. There's also a production that goes along with each one of those stories. And my son is not here right now, but William, he's 21 years old, and I'm very proud of my son. He spent a lot of time actually with all of the collective, interviewing everyone and bringing their voice, but the dresses to life with a beautiful, like sound beds from the natural world, from our drums to voice to jingle discs. So each one of that, there's an artistic expression that he was able to bring out in these dresses. So when you come through, if you bring your ear pods, you can actually hear the story of these spirits read and narrated by their family members. So it's quite a few different senses that are going to be touched. So you have your auditory, of course your heart, but you'll be able to visually see it, and you'll also be able to read it. So with that, I say Chimigwich for coming out and supporting and listening and coming with a beautiful heart. And thanks for your energy. Chimigwich.